A lot of people put emphasis on the SNPs. Well, that's important, but there's cofactors that turn them on. So if you don't have the cofactor, it's like having a brand new car with no gas.
Right.
You've got a hunk of metal.
This is the Auto Community Podcast.
This is part 2 of our series Beyond MTHFR with Bob Miller. For part 1, please visit the Auto Community Podcast show homepage on your preferred podcast platform. All interviews presented on the Auto Community Podcast are designed to provide information and inspiration only. Guests of the podcast may present opinions and anecdotes that are solely their own. And as always, before beginning any treatment protocol, consult with your preferred medical provider.
Sure, which goes back to your first question about MTHFR, that's important to look at. But the PON1 is very important to look at. Your heme oxygenase is very important to look at. There's 8 enzymes in that heme cycle. Any one of them can be a problem. Now, there's even more with heme oxygenase. Mm-hmm. Remember, I talked about the importance of NADPH.
Right.
So NADPH is made by an enzyme called G6PD. Remember, we spoke about that African, South, particularly Southern Italian, Native Americans, they will have G6PD deficiency. G6PD makes the NADPH that heme oxygenase needs. So whether your genetics are fine or not, if environmental factors are stimulating NOx and you have that NADPH still, your heme oxygenase enzyme is not going to work. A lot of people put emphasis on the SNPs. Well, that's important, but there's cofactors that turn them on. So if you don't have the cofactor, it's like having a brand new car with no gas.
Right.
You've got a hunk of metal. So even if you don't have SNPs, if you don't have the cofactor, you've got a problem.
Right.
So if NOx is upregulated and you don't have NADPH, you could have perfect genetics on heme oxygenase, NRF2 and KEAP1, but if the NADPH isn't there, it's not going to work. So we have really created the perfect storm. Now, the third environmental factor that can really impact us is mold. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what's happening, but a lot of people in the functional holistic world are believing that mold is getting stronger. Mm-hmm. One of the theories out there, and it's just that electromagnetic field somehow challenges mold and makes it come back stronger. Mm-hmm. Don't know if that's true or not. Dietrich Klinghardt did an experiment where he showed a petri dish, one exposed to it, another one in a Faraday cage, and the growth was different. So you could lead to believe that, but there's no peer-reviewed studies on that. But I think it's likely that mold is getting stronger. Mm-hmm. And probably 80% of the people I talk to, when we do the Great Plains mold test, shows they have mold. Mm-hmm. And one of the challenges is, you talk to people about mold and they'll say, nope, there's no mold in my house, I'm okay. In other words, they don't see mold growing on the walls.
Right. Right.
So it can be hiding in the furniture, the carpet. It can be in the ventilating system. I'll never forget one time I had someone come out to clean my HVAC, and they said, Mr. Miller, sorry, we can't finish the job. And I said, well, what's wrong? They said, the mold is so thick, we've actually got to cut pieces of it out and replace it. I was stunned.
Yeah.
I was stunned. Because if you would have came to my house, you wouldn't see any mold anywhere.
Right.
Oh, there's none there. But I live on the side of a mountain where it's moist. So if people live near creeks, ponds, low-lying area, you see a lot of green on the outside of the house. And there's various things you can do. You can go on Amazon and get what's called a mold armor little petri dish for like $8 or $9. Mm-hmm. I personally like the ERMI test where you collect some dust. And it's just within the past month that I had 2 people that have mold. And I said, let's check your house for mold. And they argued with me. I don't have any mold. But so I was like, just humor me, okay? And the ERMI test came back hitting the needle of this house is uninhabitable. Not just a little bit. It should be like under 5, over 20 is really high. I think the one was 22 and the other was 24. And they were like, oh my God, I never had any idea.
I think a lot of people too have this notion that, if they're in a new build, for example, that there's no possible way there could be mold because it wouldn't have had time to grow. But I can tell you just from, experience, there was an apartment building that was going up not too far from my house. And they had put up the framing and all of that. And then we had torrential downpours. And, everything was soaking wet. They're putting up, putting on doors and things like that. And everything was soaked to the bone. So I know there has to have been some mold growth within the walls and all of that kind of thing. They left, they didn't put the latches on the doors, so they were just swinging open. And it's all, wet and rainy, and they'd already drywalled. So there has to have been, a substantial amount of mold growth. So I think that's a huge misconception that, because I'm in a new build, there must not be any mold. So
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And even some of the drywall, if it sits outside and gets rained on even before it's brought to the site, it can absorb the moisture and be giving off the mold.
right.
Yeah, if somebody said to me, Bob, what do you think our biggest challenge is from, neuroinflammation and autoimmune? I probably have to say mold.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really only in the last 4 to 5 years that I've come to realize that. A couple of years ago, we did a whole for doctors. We did a 2-day seminar on mold, and it's a very serious problem. And the sad news is, some people refuse to believe it.
Right.
There's some people that mold can't hurt you. What kind of tin hat nonsense are you talking about? Who's the crazy man's telling you this kind of stuff? Some of it may be that they don't want to spend the money to clean it up, so you deny it's a problem. But it really is, and it's sad because I've come to the rationale. There are some people that I like to say, don't confuse me with the facts. My mind is made up.
Right.
I mean, scientifically, there's no debate now that mycotoxins cause inflammation, but some people will just bullhead it. It's like, I'm not going to believe it.
Right.
Which ties right into electromagnetic fields.
Yeah.
EMF, our cell phones, my God, what we do with them. Send pictures, check our, order our pizza, do our banking. It's amazing what we can do on our phones. It's sometimes we've gotten so used to it, we don't take a step back to think how incredible it is.
Right.
But there might be a price to that, and that is all that electromagnetic fields stimulates the NOx enzyme.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's actually even calcium voltage channel enzymes that, when mutated, make you more susceptible to EMF. Now, what's interesting, I've also been observing some people that don't have those mutations there that have a problem with EMF. And now we're finding that EMF actually stimulates tumor necrosis factor alpha. So, anecdote, but one woman who is very, very sensitive to EMF had a double mutation on the upregulation of TNFA.
Mm-hmm.
And it also stimulates INOS, and she had a double mutation on INOS. We'll get to that in a minute. And I believe that's the reason why she had to move to the hills of Tennessee to try to get away from EMF, because the smallest amount of, and she's not imagining this, So think about our kids today. They're going to school. They've got their iPads. They've got Wi-Fi in the ceiling. And when I speak to teachers, elementary teachers who've just taught 5 years, I'll say, tell me about the kids today versus 5 years ago. Every one of them tells me they're more anxious, they're more irritable, they're having more trouble focusing.
Yeah.
Now, there's no way I'm going to say it is just Wi-Fi. Again, 3D chess game played underwater, glyphosate, high fructose corn syrup, possibly mold exposure, EMF exposure, the heme cycle being disrupted by glyphosate. All of those together, 3D chess game playing a role. So for some people, I've teased that I'm going to make a T-shirt that says, be really smart, live in a dumb house.
Yeah.
If someone would be in my office right now, they'd see that wired mouse, wired computers, everything's wired,
right,
wired keyboard. And I'm even working on connecting my cell phone to the internet so I can turn off the Wi-Fi.
Right.
Because I believe cumulatively it's a problem. Again, if someone is interested in all the literature, not just me saying this right now, again, Jill Carnahan, EMF, Jill and I spend over an hour looking at the peer-reviewed literature. It's a video. So we pull up the peer-reviewed literature. This isn't just, tin hat somebody. I always make sure everything I say is based upon peer-reviewed literature, or if it is just an observation, I always tell that. But everything we do is based upon peer-reviewed scientific literature, Library of Congress, PubMed, where somebody's done a study, peers have reviewed it. That's why it's called peer reviewed. But again, some people are just like, that cell phone can't do anything, that mold can't do anything, and they refuse to believe it. And I feel sorry for this family members who have to suffer because of their obstinance on that subject. But, it is what it is sometimes.
Yes. Well, and I mean, I think that holds true in many other areas. One of the first interventions that I always recommend is dietary shifts. And there are some who just say, oh, no, that won't happen because my husband won't, or my older child won't, or this or that. And, I said, look, do you want to make this an uphill battle, or would you rather, give yourself, a ladder?
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up because we spoke earlier about histamine. So if we can circle back to that.
Sure.
There are many foods that are high in histamine.
Right.
And that, there's organizations and others who teach that you got to have good bacteria in the gut. And the way you do that is fermented foods. Absolutely true.
Right.
Unless you have a histamine problem.
Right.
So I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to that when they went on a low histamine diet, they were stunned at how good they felt.
Right.
So kombucha, miso, sauerkraut, anything fermented, vinegar, pickles, olives.
Bone broth and all
Bone
that.
broth. Yeah.
Mhm.
And how many people think that, I've got to get healthy. I better do some bone broth.
Right.
And I often say, I think I help people the most by taking them off things.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you how many people have been stunned by how good they felt when they stopped the high histamine foods.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said that, there's things you can take for histamine. There's an enzyme called diamine oxidase, comes from a bovine kidney that helps degrade it. Probably one of the biggest recommendation I make in my practice of let's get some DAO in there to break down the histamine. Also, there's an enzyme called histidine decarboxylase. Sometimes there's an upregulation of that, and it takes histidine, an amino acid, to make histamine. Interestingly, B6 is a cofactor.
Mm-hmm.
There's also genetics where you don't degrade B6. So people don't realize it, but for some individuals, now again, this is some individuals, a B complex is making them sick.
Right.
Because it's stimulating the histamine.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying B6 will increase your histamine, but if you have stimulation of histidine decarboxylase is already upregulated, and you don't downregulate or degrade your B6, prescription for B6 doing horrible things to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, we can't have the pill for the ill because, we could talk 20 minutes about the benefits of B6.
Yeah.
I mean, it's critical. Helps turn glutamate into GABA, helps the cysteine betaine synthase. But if you've got too much of it and an upregulation of HDC, it stimulates the histamine.
Yeah.
So as you can see there, Erin, there's so many things that can stimulate histamine, from the NOx enzymes to fermented foods to genetic weakness. Now, one of the interesting things about histamine is how it impacts our circulation. So there's a gas called nitric oxide, not what the dentist gives you, nitrous oxide, nitric oxide. And if you Google nitric oxide Nobel Prize, you'll see in 1998, 3 scientists won an award for how nitric oxide is beneficial for circulation. So, people will probably know someone who carries nitroglycerin with them. If they get chest pain, they put the nitroglycerin in their mouth, it boosts the nitric oxide, they get better flow to the heart. Everyone's heard of Viagra and Cialis. Men use that for erectile function because we need good blood flow to the penis for an erection.
Right.
So NOS3 makes that nitric oxide. And by the way, NOS3 and eNOS are the same thing. Then there's NOS2 and iNOS. And iNOS makes a boatload of nitric oxide to kill pathogens. Probably the 5th time I've said this, good thing unless it isn't. Okay.
Right.
So if it's overact, this is where we get a problem because iNOS or NOS2 suppresses eNOS or NOS3. And if anybody's looking at my chart, they'll see that at the bottom of the chart, that NOS2 suppresses NOS3. When that happens, oftentimes people get cold hands and feet, to the point there's a medical condition called Raynaud's or Raynaud's, all depends how you pronounce it,
Mm-hmm.
where the hands will turn purple or white because they don't have enough circulation to the hands and the feet. Now, it doesn't stop there. When there's a substance called BH4 tetrahydrobiopterin that is needed by the NOS enzyme to make the nitric oxide. If this runs long and hard enough, we run out of BH4. Then rather than making nitric oxide, we make a free radical called superoxide, which again is inflammatory. Now, what's interesting, gluten will stimulate the iNOS enzyme. And there are enzymes that actually predisposition you to having a difficulty with gluten. So I'm sure people have heard of celiac disease, where the gluten will actually wear away the little villi. And when people have, I mean, it happens to all of us, but if you've got these mutations, it's even worse. So
do you think that that's solely due to the gluten, or is that because of the glyphosate and all the other pesticides and things that we're treating the gluten with? Because just from experience, I've noticed that, for example, in Europe, where they utilize less of that, there you see less reactions and reactivity to gluten, even for those who are sensitive to it while living in the United States.
yeah, I've heard that story many, many times. So I think you're correct. It's cumulative.
Right.
It's the glyphosate and the gluten. And so as that gluten stimulates iNOS, that makes more inflammation. And your point was a good one. When I tell people that I've got some good news and bad news, the good news is I think you're going to feel a whole lot better. The bad news is you've got to go gluten-free.
Right.
And what's interesting is there's 3 reactions to that. One is like, cool. If that'll help me, consider it done.
Right.
Others are like, I got to think about this a little bit.
Right.
Then the other group is, can I amputate my leg instead?
Right.
Because that is, I mean, I've actually seen people have panic attacks.
Yeah.
And I finally said to them, you know what? If this is causing you this much anxiety, you're probably better off, and to me, it's amazing how there's those 3 reactions. For some people, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, nothing to it, done. Boy, I feel better, great. And other people, it just creates incredible anxiety. So for whatever reason, they can't imagine life without gluten. It's astonishing. It really is.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I've been gluten-free for 14 years. And I'll tell you, 14 years ago, there was not the same market for, gluten-free. There's gluten-free everything. You can go to a restaurant and they have a gluten-free menu, and that was non-existent when I first went gluten-free. So I will say the industry has shifted tremendously. And, though I'm not advocating for all the, products that say gluten-free necessarily, but there are many, many more options than there were 14 years ago. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I just find it, I mean, I'm no mental health expert, but I just find it fascinating how there can be those 3 dramatic reactions to that kind of thing. Same way with histamine. I mean, some people are like, this is overwhelming. I just don't know what to do. They just throw their hands up, screw it. I'm not going to do it. It's interesting how there's different reactions. And for others, going histamine light is no big deal.
Right.
Well, let me just throw in one other thing about histamine that people don't think about. When anything that sits in the refrigerator as a leftover, it starts to ferment. So many people don't understand this. It's like, okay, I ate this food and I was okay. 3 days later, I ate it again and I reacted. What's going on? Fermented. So putting food in the freezer after eating it before and then thawing before leftover can really reduce the histamine.
That's a good tip. I like that.
Now, let's go on to this iNOS. When this iNOS is upregulated, it will activate platelets. Now, platelets are our friends because if we cut ourselves, they clot and they stop the bleeding. Didn't have that, we'd bleed to death every time we cut ourselves. But as you know, the amount of clots and strokes is going up dramatically. And a clot is when the platelets get a little too sticky.
Right.
And in our current environment with the the virus that's going around, that seems to be increasing because although we're not talking about the virus, it stimulates the same pathway that we're talking about here with mold.
Right.
So then what happens? It creates something called SCD40L and VEGF. And the SCD40L, I was blown away when I found this. Peer-reviewed studies on this. Higher levels of that is found in autism. Now, the way we calm that all down is our good fats. So we all know the benefits of taking a fish oil, EPA, DHA, and some people take a fish oil and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how good I am.
Right.
Other people take a fish oil and it's like, oh, I'm worse.
Right.
So why is that? Well, there's an enzyme called FADS, fatty acid desaturase, and another one called ELOVL2 that actually take those fats and turn them into what's called protectins and resolvins that will then be anti-inflammatory.
Mm-hmm.
Also, NADPH is a cofactor. One of the common things I see in people who are really struggling, they have a lot of mutations in their FADS enzymes.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the people that their fish oils don't even help them. And there's a couple of companies now that make products called protectins and resolvins that actually bypass that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we're looking at is things like pantethine, choline, carnitine that help the body utilize the fats.
Right.
Just spoke to a lady yesterday, came from an ethnic group where you always just marry within the same group, and she had homozygous from both parents on every one of the FAD SNPs. There's
Mm-hmm.
20 of them, and her digestion was horrible. We formulated a product called Fatty Acid Assist, and as long as she takes that with meals, she's fine. Stops, she's sick. Now, the final thing we want to get into, and then we're just starting to research this, and in March, if you go to Jill Carnahan, I'm not sure what it's going to be called yet, but it has to do with arachidonic acid.
Right.
So EPA and EPA turns into DHA. However, when we get upregulation of superoxide or tumor necrosis factor, there's an enzyme called PLA2,
Mm-hmm.
and it pulls arachidonic acid out of the cell membrane. Again, arachidonic acid is needed inside the body, but when it's pulled out of the cell membrane, it can be one bad boy.
Right.
It can turn into what is called leukotrienes. It can make prostaglandins. It can make histamine. It can make something called thromboxane A2.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe this is really overlooked in the holistic field,
Mm-hmm.
that arachidonic acid is being pulled out of the cell membranes.
Mm-hmm.
We do a what's called an omega quant, where we look at the ratios of the EPA to the arachidonic acid, and it should be something like 5 to 11. We see people in their 60s and 70s, the ratio, that their EPA and DHA is depleted, the arachidonic acid is high,
Right.
and they're as inflamed as can be.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nutrients that will actually calm down PLA2. Don't have time to get into those today, but a couple of them are like resveratrol, ginkgo, citicoline, black cumin seed oil. So you can see how this perfect storm exists. We're just digging into the literature, but there is some studies showing leukotrienes, which are made from arachidonic acid, being high in neuroinflammation
Mm-hmm.
and also in memory loss.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we're not getting our good fats anymore. We're getting all of the omega-6s and the corn oils and everything.
Right.
So those ratios are going off. So there's another part of the perfect storm: diet, fats, plus weakness. So some people can eat a junk diet and be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not okay, but they're not really ill.
Right.
But if you got trouble with your FADS enzymes or your PLA2 is upregulated, eating that bad fats will really harm you more than others.
Right.
So,
And I remember years ago looking into the omega balancing between the omega 6s and 3s. And, our standard American diet is very high in that omega 6. And a lot of people were already out of balance when it comes to that in general. So, yeah, I think it does. It becomes this kind of perfect storm. And I'm sure that is contributing to some of the higher levels of arachidonic acid. So,
yeah, so that's a quick snapshot of the pathways we're looking at. And again, if someone goes to your website, you have a PDF there or perhaps a JPEG that they can download. And as they listen to this, they can actually look through those pathways that I'm talking to. So
yeah, so everything will be posted in the show notes for those of you that are listening. Just go ahead and click down below on any of the links, and we'll get you those charts that Bob's talking about.
So that's what we're looking at, and our future research I'm very excited about. We're looking at something called ferropoptosis, where iron, in addition to being a free radical if the heme cycle is not working, where there's multiple environmental factors that will cause the iron to really start doing some damage. And maybe in the fall we can chat about that, or in the summer, because we're gonna have more research on that, and I believe that's another serious contributing factor.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
So there's the cliff notes of what I think is happening. So to summarize it, the environmental factors are things like glyphosate, all the other pesticides, mold. Don't underestimate mold, high fructose corn syrup, electromagnetic fields. Of course, we give our animals growth hormones so they get fatter faster. We're going to look back on that someday and say, what were we thinking? Other than just make more money. And then there's genetic factors that we can inherit from our parents, where the TNFA may be overactive, the NF-kappa beta may be active, the SIRT1 can be underactive, heme oxygenase can be underactive. I didn't mention this, but you can actually have gain of function in the INOS enzymes, where they are more prone to be overactive. You can have downregulation of ENOS. So to go back to your opening question, if somebody says they've looked at their genetics, I really doubt that they've looked at PON1, INOS, ENOS fads, because it really is a very complex. And I'm hoping someday maybe to get some AI or something that can help with this, because it isn't a pill for the ill. Because when somebody says, "Oh, here's my protocol for fill in the blank," good chance it works 10 to 15% of the time.
Right. Yeah, it's this whole field, I think, is unfortunately it's so complicated and so individualized. It has to be by necessity, and with so many people out there struggling, and looking at the genetic pathways that might be impacted, it's for us anyway, it was a key component in really starting to turn the tide. Just an anecdote, I guess, of my own son. So when we were dealing with pandas, extreme anger and aggression was the most troublesome symptom, off the charts kind of. And the histamine piece for us was huge, looking at his histamine pathways, seeing how inflamed he was. And you could see it. I mean, his whole body he just looked inflamed. Everything looked, he was overweight. He'd always been really thin, just puffy, and his behavior was inflammatory constantly. So, that was a huge key piece for us in kind of getting the histamine lowered, getting the mast cells under control, all of those things. And then we could reach a point where we started to heal some of the more physical issues, because nothing was touching, some of his other symptoms. So I do think it's really, really important to look at the genetic pieces and how they might be expressing symptomatically, regardless of what path you take as far as treatment goes, but looking at every single piece of genetics and saying, okay, well, there's a potential for some issue here. There's a potential for some issue here. And that really kind of brought new light to our case, which, he had been ill for many years before we came to see you. So,
Well, my honor to be able to help. And you're absolutely correct. And one of my favorite sayings is, when the house is on fire, you don't paint the walls and mow the lawn. So step number one always is trying to calm down the inflammation. I think some people try to go too far. As we said earlier, some people see MTHFR, they give methylfolate, and it's like, that's going to make things worse. Or it's like, oh, you've got heavy metals, we got to do a detox. Well, maybe you do. Or maybe you've got candida, we got to kill that off. Maybe you do. But many times people come to me and say, I tried doing all these things and it backfired.
Yeah.
Number one, put out the fire.
Yeah.
Then number two, do some cleanup. Then number three, do rebuilding.
Right.
You don't call out the carpenters when the house is burning down.
Right.
But unfortunately, we don't think in those terms.
Well, I think even in the biomedical world, there's this, I think it's kind of a dangerous pathway where everybody wants to, kill all the pathogens. And, it's, oh, okay, let's go in and, you've got to take antibiotic herbs for Lyme, or, antiviral herbs for Epstein-Barr, or all of these things. which, may be necessary down the road. But yeah, I agree 100%. I don't see a lot of healing happening unless the inflammation and the inflammatory response is calmed prior to that.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. The original naturopathic philosophy, that goes way back, was that inflammation is the root cause of all issues. And of course, the traditional approaches where that's nonsense. We've got medicine now that's going to take care of all these things. But now we're kind of coming full circle to find out that original philosophy was correct.
Right.
But unfortunately, there's now just so many environmental factors that we didn't have. Matter of fact, I've said this before. I said, looking at the genome of autistic children and looking at my genome, I've said to myself, you know what? I think if I was a 10-year-old, I'd be an autistic mess. Now, I'm this crazy guy who thinks drawing circles and connecting dots is fun, but I'm sure of it. I mean, I have the pattern of probably a nonverbal pandas autistic kid, but my mother wasn't exposed to Wi-Fi, glyphosate, plastics, no genetically modified foods. When I was a kid, my parents went to a farmer's market and bought the foods right from the farmer. I slopped around in the creeks and climbed trees rather than, pushing buttons on a computer.
Right.
And so I think it's largely environmental. And, I don't know if you ever heard the old analogy of the coal miners used to take a canary in a cage with them. And when the canary fell over, they knew that they better get out because the oxygen levels were going down.
Right.
They didn't feel it, but that's why they had the canary there. And many people with genetic weakness are the canary in the coal mines. They're impacted more strongly by environmental factors.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Looking at my own genetics versus my son's, my SNPs are actually far worse, if you will, than my son's. But yeah, I have had various autoimmune issues, since about the age of 18, but, didn't have really any issues as a young child. And, I think it really speaks to the fact that there's something going on within our environment that is impacting these kids who, like with my son, his genetics are actually look better than mine do, but he's been impacted far worse.
Well, absolutely. And we don't know, even some of these glyphosates, while the child is in the womb, they're getting the blood from the mother. I mean, obviously.
Right.
So there's a group called Environmental Working Group that talks about all the toxins that are in the core blood that are being given to the baby before they're even born. And I think it's taking a terrible toll on us because even aside from all the autism and pandas, just observing people are more angry, they're more frustrated. It doesn't take much to get people upset. We're seeing an increase in violence. I often think that when I went to elementary school, if somebody would have said, well, we need to lock the doors and have a guard, we would have said, what?
Right.
What are you thinking?
Right.
Why would you do that? Another fun anecdote is, back then as a boy, you had a pocket knife and you carried it with you and you'd have show and tell. Oh, look at the pocket knife I got for Christmas. Now today they'd be having a fit. They'd be expelling you. And but back then nobody thought, and nobody did get stabbed from boys carrying pocket knives with them. So what's changed? It's the neuroinflammation that's making us more aggressive. And even you see with cancel culture and all those things of how people are so angry. I wouldn't being a comedian now is almost putting your life in danger.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I see that very often too. So it's we've become this very accusatory and humorless society, I think, unfortunately. So I think your work and the work of everybody working to heal each and every one of us will contribute to the betterment of us as a whole. So I thank you for what you do.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
So, Bob, people can reach you at TOL Health, stands for Tree of Life, TOLhealth.com.
Yes.
And you are in Ephrata, Pennsylvania. And then just real quick, can you just tell people where they could order the genetic test in order to have an appointment with you?
Sure. Well, best to just call our office, 717-733-2003. And the way it works, they order the genetic test, which is only $229. We send you a little kit where you collect saliva. If you think you can't get saliva out of a child, we do a buccal swabs, but we encourage saliva if at all possible. Then around 9-10 weeks, we get the results back. I work with people locally, but probably 80% of the folks I work with are around the world. So we do a Zoom call, and we do a screen share, and we record the call to go through everything. And then what we do is we, show where the weakness is. I prepare about the night before the call. I'll spend 45 minutes going through the genome, making some notes, and then do a screen share, record it, show it to the person, and then make lifestyle changes such as check your house for mold. Let's go easy on those histamine foods. Move your cell phone away from your bed, things like that. And then supplementation. There are supplements that will calm down tumor necrosis factor. There are supplements that will speed up the heme cycle. They will support SIRT1. They will calm down mast cells. So will calm down histamine, calm down iNOS, help you digest the fats, slow down the PLA2 enzyme. And it's a process. It isn't just like take these and now you're done. You've got to go through gentle. One of my favorite sayings is I'd rather be a little too late than too soon. So I usually start out gently. Let's just do one or two things here, see how you do. Because what happens is if you start turning off inflammation too soon, people start to detox.
Right.
And then they start throwing off toxins. And they get a stomach ache or they get loose stools. And all of a sudden it's like, Bob, you're making me sick. It's like, well, sort of. So, some people understand Herx, others don't. And
Right.
for those who don't, it's just, I stopped everything. I think you're a quack. So we got to go slow.
Right.
Take baby steps, and then usually every 6-8 weeks, take another step.
Right.
So this is for people who are really serious, who are willing to make changes, maybe get an air purifier, clean the ductwork, make some dietary changes, because there's no easy fixes to this.
Right.
There isn't if somebody tells you they have figured out the issue and the solution, probably a good idea to run.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, as always, it's been a pleasure. I always tell people if I'm talking to Bob, I got to make sure I have my smarty pants on. So, so thank you so much. You always enlighten and educate, and you're entertaining too. So
I tell people that we have cutting edge nutrition and really corny humor. So
yeah. I love that. That's perfect.
Oh, good.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. You can find Bob again at tolhealth.com. I appreciate y'all listening. Find his charts below in the show notes, and we'll see you next time. Take care.